Hello and welcome to the Virtual Social Market Foundation. I'm James Kirkup, I'm the director of the SMF. You are here, I hope you realize, for one of our excellent Ask the Expert events, where we bring academic expertise to, well, what used to be Westminster, what these days is my spare room, to form connections between academic experts, like our two main speakers today, and what we grandly call policymakers, like our grand final speaker today, our minister. Yeah, some housekeeping before I get on to explain a little bit more about the event. The main point is, if you look up on the top left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see we're recording this event. I just said that when we get to questions, just bear in mind that there will be a permanent record of your questions. You're speaking to potentially the whole of the internet and not just the lovely people in this electronic room. When we come to questions, there'll be lots of different ways to ask questions. The best way to ask a question is to type it into the chat box. I and some of my invisible colleagues will be keeping an eye on that, and we will pull out the best questions. And if you're okay with that, we will highlight you on screen and unmute you and give you a chance to actually ask the panelists your question directly. We may also do, I may read some out later on as as time grows short. We have another 70 minutes on the clock, which is nice. Our speakers today, hopefully you are aware, having signed up for this lovely event, are in speaking order. We have Simon Edmonds from Innovate UK. Innovate UK is part of UKRI. It is thanks to UKRI and Innovate UK that the SMF's Ask the Expert series of events are possible. So we're very grateful to our kind sponsor, and we will have as it were, a word from our sponsor in a second. We will then hear from Dr. Effie Kesidou, who is many things, but an associate professor in economics at Leeds University Business Centre and also senior research fellow at the Enterprise Research Centre. The ERC is essentially the intellectual host organisation for the work you're going to be hearing about today. We'll also then hear from Anastasia Ree, who is also from the Enterprise Research Centre. And finally, we will hear from Paul Scully, who is both the Minister for Small Business at the Department for Business and a former manager and owner of small businesses. So someone who can talk from both policymaker and personal experience about the issues we're talking about. And the issues we're talking about are small business experience of COVID and what comes next. I'll try, because I'm always the least interesting person on these panels, and today especially so, I will try not to talk at you much longer, but later on if I can't resist, I will be trying to talk a little bit about some of the questions that arise around small business, technology uptake, and the productivity puzzle that faces the UK, because this stuff really is, as we'll hear, I think fundamental to our economic and therefore social future. But that is by far, I promise, the longest bit of talking you're going to hear from me in the next 63 minutes now. So I'm going to essentially shut up and hand over to Simon Edmonds from Innovate UK, who will tell us all about Innovate UK and why this is all happening. Then we'll go to Effie, Anastasia, and Paul. So, Simon.
Thanks, James. And yes, we're delighted to be sponsoring this event with you, and looking forward to the questions and the grilling that we're going to get later on today. I think I've got to talk a little bit about Innovate UK and supporting small businesses during the pandemic, and well, what a year that we've just had. And yes, Happy New Year, everybody. Although as we started off, we might have not felt it was a happy year, but we are in the situation that we're in. Our year started normally last year, as did everybody else, and this issue then hit us around February time. Quite quickly, I think everybody will agree, the support the government has put in place was pretty comprehensive and unprecedented. Certainly, I've worked in government a lot in my life, and I've never seen such a response being put in place. We were fortunate to deliver a specific part of that package, what we called our COVID support package, and that was deliberately targeted at SMEs that are really familiar to us. These are very fast-growing, high-growth, scaling SMEs, possibly SMEs that are pre-revenue, pre-income, don't have the sort of tidy profit and loss accounts yet or balance sheets that you need for a lot of support. So this was a cohort that we were keen to keep working on R&D. We targeted our first intervention at very much 6-month projects designed to somehow aid the coronavirus impact. It covered a whole wealth of things. There were projects on PPE, projects on homeschooling. There was a variety. It was by far the biggest competition we've ever seen in our lives. We eventually funded about 1,000 SMEs through that program, but over 20,000 applied. So that was an amazing response. The rest of our support package has been to help people continue with their existing grants so that they didn't fall away, so that they would keep these projects going and keep people in work, and importantly, hopefully not furlough people, because that would have an equal effect, not being able to furlough people. Being very flexible over extensions and changes to grants as supply chains changed all over the place. We put a package of loan support. So we're known, Innovate UK, as a grant provider, but we also provide innovation loans. And we've run 3 competitions of innovation loans. And the largest fund that we've just working our way through is a sustainable innovation fund, which is really, again, designed at businesses, mainly small businesses, who are targeting net zero and COP26. We also brought in 75 extra advisors to what is now called our Innovation Edge service. This was quite a crucial intervention. We now have 250 specialist business advisors who were working with SMEs to help them get through immediate problems, cash flow issues, and they've delivered something like 2,300 interventions with SMEs in the last 9 months. And we still have more work to do on that. In addition to that, we were still funding all of our major programs in Innovate, our Smart Funding program, which is the main grant funding program for SMEs. We were funding all of the industrial strategy challenge funds and our big managed programs in aerospace, automotive, energy. So it's been an immensely busy year. What we're finding was a bit of a surprise, to be perfectly honest with you. At the start of a pandemic, you can imagine, the world is going to drop out from underneath businesses. And I've no doubt that happened in a lot of cases. Actually, in the cohort of businesses and the competitions that we were running, we have never seen the sort of volumes that we've been seeing before, which sort of puts research and development, innovation, remaining pretty critical. We work with the Enterprise Research Centre a lot. They've conducted 2 major studies into our cohort. And I'm just going to give you a couple of headlines as to what they're finding, that R&D and innovation remain pretty critical. Some business revenues and some businesses are rebounding from the pandemic. Some cash flow concerns are decreasing over time. The relief on business rates has yielded quite a lot of benefits, and some collaborations are beginning to rise overall, but they did take a big step back during the pandemic. So that's what we've been doing in the last 9 months, and we will continue doing this. At the same time, like everybody else, we took Innovate UK, and welcome to my dining room. Behind those windows is Weymouth Bay, and so we're all in our rooms, except I can see the minister's in his office. I remember those offices, that frosted glass that you tried to peer through. So we ended the year with almost double the amount of projects than we started the year. We are still funding all of our normal programs as normal, and we're looking forward to a spending review where we continue to make the case for innovation and R&D in this coming year.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'm looking forward to the Minister giving us the date for the spending review later on as well. Just the nearest decade. I will now hand over to the first of our experts. This being Ask the Expert, Effie Cassidy. Now, am I right in thinking that the two of you are sharing a slide deck? This is a first for us, I think. So here we go. We should hopefully have the slides on screen. Good. Right. I'll mute myself again. Off you go.
Yeah, thank you, James. Good afternoon. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today. So I'm Dr. Effie Cassidy, and together with Dr. Anastasia Ree, we would like to share with you the insights from the Enterprise Research Center's Business Futures project. So in the next slide, some information about the project. So we collected data from 1,000 small and medium enterprises in the UK at the aftermath of the first COVID-19 wave from October 2020 until early December 2020. The focus of the survey was understanding three key issues: the approaches towards net zero by small and medium enterprises, the uptake of digital technologies, and of course all that during the times of crisis caused by COVID-19. Now, my part is focusing on net zero. So the motivation for focusing on approaches of small and medium enterprises towards net zero is threefold. First, the climate emergency and the UK's net zero emissions law to be attained by 2050. Second, the COVID-19 crisis, which what I argue is that it could present an opportunity for transitioning to a green economy. And third, the fact that we know very little about how existing SMEs in Britain are greening their operations. And this is because the focus of previous research is mostly on large corporations or new startups. So in the Business Future Survey, in the next slide, we examine the attitudes of owners and managers. And this is because the attitudes of owners and managers of SMEs are really important because they can influence the adoption of environmental practices. So this is just a snapshot. We ask about their views on environmental spending. So figure 1 shows that 80% of the firms strongly agree or somewhat agree that businesses should spend more on environmental protection. So overall, we found that owners and managers, despite the crisis, they have positive attitudes. They are ready and willing to invest on net zero. So in the next slide, importantly, we examine the most widely diffused environmental practices. And what we find is that more than half of the firms reported that they changed the production and distribution processes in order to reduce carbon emissions. Second most diffused practice is the use of renewable energy. And around a third of firms invested in training their employees on environmental matters, introducing new low carbon products and services, and undertaking environmental reports. So overall, SMEs are undertaking a variety of technological, not only technological, but also organizational and managerial practices. This is very important because combating pollution requires firms to adopt a portfolio of environmental practices that span over different business domains. So crucially, businesses need to combine technological and managerial practices because often these complement each other. And by complementing each other, they generate increasing returns, not only upon environmental performance, they do not only improve environmental performance, but also they may improve the economic performance of SMEs. So in the next slide, we would like to understand the factors that drive SMEs to pursue these environmental practices. So in table 2, we indicate that in the context of the crisis, more than half of the firms said that they adopted net zero practices in order to reduce their costs. And a similar percentage of the firms, they invested on environmental practices because they want to improve their image and reputation. Then 1/3 of the firms stated that government policies, especially grants and subsidies, and environmental regulations and taxes are the key external drivers for adopting net zero practices. So in summary, our results show that firms are driven to reduce their carbon emissions by both internal, their own strategies, but also external, the government policy pressures. So importantly, the internal determinants include business strategies that they take now a long-term view. They are seeking to increase investment and strengthen their internal capabilities for 2 reasons. They want to save costs and increase their internal efficiencies, and they want to enhance their reputation and their image of their companies because they anticipate pressures not only in the UK, but also globally from consumers and also large buyers and suppliers. So in the final slide on net zero, of course, we understand that several factors may prevent SMEs to commit to net zero targets. Unsurprisingly, 46% of the firms stated that COVID-19 is a barrier. So it is important to understand the role of COVID-19 in light of the previous findings that I just present you. So what I argue here is that the economic crisis induced by the pandemic plays a dual role. It is a barrier, but also could become an opportunity for businesses to transition to net zero. So as I have shown you in the previous slide, the strategy that some SMEs are pursuing is the long-term view strategy, investing in environmental practices, because of course they want to comply with the regulation and improve their environmental performance, but also they anticipate reductions in their costs and increasing their efficiency. So next, the results show that lack of information on low carbon technologies was a key constraint for many firms. So lack of information, as well as complying with regulations. But again, regulations play a dual role. They are a driver, as we have seen before, but also is cited as a constraint. So now I will hand over to Anastasia that will continue with, very importantly, with the digital technologies.
Thank you very much, Effie. So I continue with this part of the survey of the first insights we have obtained from the Business Futures survey on digital uptake of SMEs. When we actually designed the survey, we designed it prior to the pandemic, and our main perspective, main objective was to try to understand how broadly digital technologies are diffused among the overall population of the UK SMEs in 2020. But of course, the pandemic came, and we slightly adapted our survey to reflect on what would be the changes of SMEs to answer the challenges of COVID-19 pandemic and lockdowns, etc. And I would like to start my presentation actually with 2 figures which are quite important to comprehend what is happening in terms of digital technologies uptake in SMEs. Is that about 50% of SMEs answer that introducing new digital technologies was a priority for them in 2020. And they perceive that the importance of this business priority, this objective, increased as a result of COVID-19. So if we look at the diffusion of digital technologies among SMEs, so we could not ask about all different technologies, and we needed to limit our list to 10 technologies. Some of them are are longer existing, and some of them are more advanced digital technologies like artificial intelligence and data-driven and augmented and virtual reality technologies types. And of course, these technologies are unevenly diffused among the population of SMEs. So we see that long existing technologies, the ones like accounting software, the website sales, online marketing, social media, are quite diffused among SMEs, and the majority of the SMEs use them. On the other hand, other technologies like artificial intelligence, newer technologies, artificial intelligence and machine learning, for example, they are still quite novel for the SMEs. But what does it take us, tell us about any possible shift in 2020 in the digital uptake? Actually, if we compare these results from our Business Futures survey with some of data points from different sources like Going Digital report in 2019, like OECD or Longitudinal Small Business Survey in 2019, we see actually for quite a few of these technologies, there was quite an important shift. For example, if we compare the figure from 2019 in terms of the use of websites to sell goods, it was 53% in 2019, and this year in 2020 we see that about 70% of businesses use websites to sell goods and services. Quite an important shift was also concern customer and relationship management, and this is quite an interesting result for us because CRM systems were notoriously underused by SMEs as far as the previous research says us. And what was also quite interesting is quite an important increase in the use of more advanced digital technologies, the ones like artificial intelligence and augmented and virtual reality. So if you compare 2019 with 2020, you see an important increase in these figures. So, but just overall, we can say that 50% of SMEs in the UK use between 4 and 7 digital technologies from this list, which of course is a little bit limited. But what can we say about the changes in the intensity of use of these digital technologies, which were triggered by challenges of COVID-19? And of course, it is Zoom boom. So we are here all present on delivering this virtual event on Zoom, and actually 95% of businesses say that they increased their use of video conference and other collaborative tools. But it's not only Zoom boom, it's also about other technologies as well. So quite an impressive result we obtained here is that there was a 64% increase in the use of Internet of Things type of technology, so all connected devices, sensors, etc. There was, of course, an increase in online marketing and the social media, which is quite important. But there was also an important increase of 50% of businesses say they increased their use of artificial intelligence and virtual reality, and about the same says about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Of course, well, the technologies like accounting and computer-aided design software are probably not as much influenced by the pandemic challenges, but for all other technologies we asking about, there was quite an important shift. Overall, 62% of businesses recognize that they made some changes to the use of digital technologies, and they innovated somehow. So we also asked what the businesses, what would be their perception of the outcomes of the implementation of these digital technologies. And what is interesting is that 38% of businesses replied that actually it helped them to increase their innovation activity. And of course, it also helped them increase sales. But what is interesting is this slightly negative result about costs. 43% of businesses said that the increase in implementation of digital technologies increased costs. And of course, it is related not only with the purchase of digital technologies itself, but also with all the IT related costs like hardware or hiring an IT specialist, etc., etc. And I will finish with one last slide, and this figure of 71%. Actually, businesses replied that the introduction of new digital technologies and the challenges they were put before by the COVID-19 actually influenced their business model in itself. And there are quite a lot of businesses, and these arguments from our open question, just to illustrate the argument, is that there was a significant or partial change in the business model itself, and there are a lot of businesses that for whom the challenges of COVID-19 completely changed their approach to customers and their business model. And I leave it here.
Thank you very much, Anastasia. Thank you very much, Effie. That's vanished. Lovely. I can now hand over to our last speaker, Paul Scully, Minister, who will maybe tell us a little bit about you're interested to hear your reflections on everything we've just heard. Paul, there's an awful lot there, and maybe any thoughts on how that might inform your work and policy going forwards on around small business.
No, thanks, James, and thanks, Simon, for all you're doing. Really appreciate the work of the Social Market Foundation, and it's a really interesting panel event. I'm going to be interested to hear the questions later. There's a lot of large organisations that are represented here, including government and academia. But I'm glad to see that there's some SMEs here that are represented, because it's really important that we absolutely hear from you as well. You're feeling the impact on a day-to-day basis, and government relies on you, the country is relying on you to support us all in building back better. We heard from Anastasia and Effie, and thank you so much for that presentation, about the work and the sort of overview of SMEs and where their capacity and resilience is. And as James said, I've run small businesses for 25 years or so before I was elected. And I know only too well that you spend so much time sometimes working for your business. You don't often have time to lift your head up and look forward and work on your business. And looking forward, building up that resilience, looking down the road at what may be coming. But and that was in normal times when I was doing it. Yes, I did go through 2 recessions over my time, but nothing like we're facing at the moment. So I'm always in awe at the resilience, not just the resilience of small businesses now, but what I hope is going to be, whereas the business word of 2021, business word of 2020 was clearly furlough. I'm really hoping pivot will be the business word of 2021, where small businesses, the whole ethos of small businesses, apart from the excitement and entrepreneurial zeal to get stuck in and deliver something and see and make a dream a reality, but it's also the agility and nimbleness of small businesses. And so just to recognise, and we've got some great examples over the last year that I've seen, recognise that either you're running out of road in your existing business model, or just seeing there's another opportunity one side or another, and being able to have that agility and awareness and hopefully support around you to be able to make those changes. So I can tell you any number of examples, like pizza pilgrims who used to sell pizzas and still do, but their restaurants were closed. They started changing those into pizza in a box and selling them at probably a higher price for you to cook at home and have the experience of cooking the same pizza at home with all the family. So, a great, simple, brutally simple idea, but they're selling more pizzas out of a box than they were out of their kitchens. And there's lots and lots of really interesting examples around that. And some of this will be digital take-up that we've just heard. Some of it, and I'm glad to hear Effie's contribution about looking at net zero, which is hugely important for the priorities of BEIS, which are more about later on. But as I say, we've had a tough year. We've had some unprecedented challenges, and national restrictions have been therefore so tough for businesses that have not necessarily been able to lift their head or find that different path. But they've been working with their employees, and again, it's something that is peculiar to people that run their own businesses or are bosses of a business. It gives you different perspective on life when you have been responsible for other people's livelihoods as well. So I know that there will be a lot of sacrifices from company directors out there to make sure that their employees, good employers always invest in their people, and to make sure that they are helping those people protect their jobs and let them put food on the table is a real challenge. I see Simon has said that margarita from Pizza Pilgrims is his favourite. That's in the chat. Absolutely, supporting those small businesses is brilliant. But we will continue to develop and amend the support that we have on offer to SMEs throughout the various restrictions. But these restrictions are difficult, but they are necessary to save lives and protect the NHS. And we've got the vaccine there that's rolling out. We had 4 million jabs that's to date, and we're going great guns on that. But SMEs can't work on externalities. You've got to manage the risk, understand the risk that's there in front of you, and deal with what you can do. So we've got to make sure that we are sprinting across the line in terms of being able to lift restrictions and getting to that recovery piece, and not relying on government or indeed anybody else to provide that ability to bounce back. But yes, look for the support, but I know small businesses will be working on their own plans to be able to pivot or develop their business. In terms of the longer point there, and this is a futures discussion after all, I'm still committed to make sure that the UK is the best place to start and grow and scale and run a business. And the programs that we offered before the virus hit are still in place to support that recovery. And I'll go further as well. My one drive is to make sure that that's consistent across the country. So I don't care where you are in the UK, whether you're in a city, whether you're in a town or a village, whether you're in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland or England, the Southwest or the Northeast, you should be able to have access to finance, to infrastructure, to mentoring, to peer-to-peer networking, all of these sort of things. And of course, that solid business advice. But the government-backed British Business Bank prior to COVID was supporting more than £8 billion worth of finance to more than 100,000 or nearly 100,000 SMEs. And that includes the Startup Loans Programme that's delivered 77,000 startup loans to British businesses. 40% of those have gone to female-led businesses and 25% to companies run by Black and minority ethnic entrepreneurs. And that work's continuing, in addition to the finance provided by the extra loan schemes that have happened since the pandemic. But we're also continuing to tackle late payments through the Office of Small Business Commission and the Prompt Payment Code, which you may well have seen the announcement that we've strengthened that and relaunched that just today. By signing up to the Prompt Payment Code and sticking to the rules, large firms can help Britain to build back better, protect the jobs, innovation and growth, and which small businesses drive right the way through the UK. I was really interested, though, as I said, to see Effie's considerations about that and the results of the survey about net zero, because my last company was a company called Nudge Factory, so called because of nudges in public policy of what small businesses and other businesses on the call will probably know as marketing. How it makes it easy to make it easy for people to do the right thing. And so I was really pleased to see, actually, although they were sort of mid-table, government interventions weren't the primary driver. It was cost, it was ease of doing business, it was reputation and principles of doing the right thing that topped out, whether it was government subsidies or government or barriers by government taxes and these kind of things. Because I think that's how we're going to achieve net zero, if we have the business landscape support the government's ambitions. Government do all this stuff on itself. It doesn't create jobs, apart from unless we build things. It won't do net zero on its own. It will be business, it will be communities, it will be individuals and areas that make these happen. So I'm glad that that's it, there as well. In terms of tech adoption and digital skills, of course, loads of people have been working from online and from home, and so clearly interest in digital technology has increased. Anastasia described it as the Zoom boom. I'll alienate 90% of the audience by age when I thought that was a 21st century Basil Brush reference, but but clearly we've all gone to Zoom, we've gone to Teams, we've gone to any number of video conferencing technologies. So it's hardly surprising to see those at the top. But again, it is the sort of the time and ease of doing business. When you look at the accounting software, that was right up there as well. I remember the days when my last business, I started off with a copy of Sage on my computer at home, and when I got my first office, I kept having to go home to do my accounts at midnight, but then it all went in the cloud, and I looked at different structures, and now everything before I left the company was in the cloud. And I'd be interested to know, with those businesses that say that the costs were going up as a result of this because of that IT take up, whether they're expecting and how quickly their long-term costs would be going down as a result of that take up. But there are UK businesses that are starting out online for the first time and starting their online activities. It's important that we do help them, work with them. And that's why, as part of the work of the government's productivity review in 2018, we're supporting businesses to recover and build resilience by encouraging the adoption, which has been accelerated by COVID, of the effective use of technologies and digital solutions. And we're also supporting our partnership, partner organisation, Be the Business, to offer online resources to help business understand how technology can improve their businesses, find the right tech solution for their needs, and crucially implement tech effectively into the business, ingrain it in the business, an area where business often fails. Now, I know that you will welcome my new boss, the new business secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, as my former boss, Alok Sharma, moves to his role leading the COP26 climate change summit that's taking place in Glasgow at the end of the year. Now, Kwasi's been clear that he wants to build on the work already done by Alok Sharma, continuing to directly engage with business and be the voice of business around the cabinet table. I think just in conclusion, it'd be helpful if I outline the 5 departmental priorities that Kwasi has set up for the year ahead, that everything we're doing in our department is going to hang off. And that's supporting business through the pandemic and recovery, backing long-term growth and taking advantage of Brexit, delivering net zero, unleashing innovation, and delivering the national security regime. So please do be assured that as we continue to look at how we adjust our business support and get that consistency, but in a way also that ensures people can get back to work, protecting both the UK economy and the livelihoods of people around the country, we will work with you, we will listen to you, but we commit to backing long-term growth and economic stability and ensuring that SMEs have the right economic conditions and support to achieve the growth they want. But it's been great to hear the views of the panel. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm actually going to abuse my position as chair, but I'm going to do so on the grounds that the Social Market Foundation is technically a small business, albeit a not-for-profit one with charitable status. So speaking as a small business operator with an interest in this stuff, I just want to one question, I think, really to, well, a little bit to Paul and also to mainly for Anastasia about that, you know, the finding in the survey about technology take-up, where the picture comes across is that the adoption of some technologies has been accelerated by the pandemic. And it's really, I said, the question for Anastasia is whether or not you can help contextualize that leap forward. How much progress on that uptake have we seen relative to previous years, where Be the Business and all the rest? I mean, basically, government has been trying to do this for a long time, or create conditions for this for a long time. So if you could help me contextualize that for a little bit for us, Anastasia, that'd be great. And for Paul, I suppose, how do you best capitalize on that? mean, is your view that essentially having seen that leap forward among SMEs, do you just get out of the way and let things progress, or are there things you can do to make sure that progress continues at that pace? And also, actually, one tiny supplementary follow your point, Paul. In your remarks, you talked about some figures for, and this is a question from one of my colleagues at the SMF who's researching this very question at the moment. You talked about the pattern of support for SMEs, and you mentioned the degree of support for BAME-owned businesses and female-owned businesses. And could you possibly repeat those figures and tell us if are those new figures? I'm not sure I'm not sure we were aware of them. But anyway, that's a sideline question. But maybe Anastasia might you want to go first on that question of magnitude.
Yes, thank you, James. Very important question, actually, because for sure there are changes which which are resulted from COVID-19 challenges, and there are other changes which were probably more progressive, more gradual from one year to another, because this is the way any innovation, any technological innovation diffuses over the population of businesses or people. So that's why we asked actually the question, how do you reflect on the increase due to the pandemic? And so the chart that I showed, that the 95% esteem that they increased their use of video conferencing and collaborative tools as a result of pandemic. So they attribute this shift in the use of these technologies to the COVID-19. So then we don't have this data for quite a long time yet, because the results came only just in the beginning of December. And so we are going to take some time to try to disentangle the effect of COVID-19 from the more progressive, from 1 year to 1 year change, and comparing to previous 2019 data. The problem is that, of course, different surveys cover different types of businesses, and different questions are asked about different technologies, and this is a little bit challenging. But overall, I think there was a positive dynamic already, which was only reinforced by COVID-19. And actually, what was very, very striking in these is that businesses innovated hugely, because if we compare it with just the data, which is very well understood about innovation, about the process innovation in the small and medium enterprises in the UK, we see that not probably 1/3 of business innovate from 1 year to another. And here we had 60% of businesses who made actually to increase the use of digital technology, so to introduce new digital technology. It is a process innovation in itself, somehow. And so there was this shift because the challenges were massive, and businesses replied by innovating into processes, by adapting new technologies. And we think that probably this is a kind of a pivoting point when more and more businesses which were reluctant to adopt more tech in the past 1 year ago, they are probably now see better benefits of introducing new technologies in the future. And of course, it will be only possible to see that in the years to come, but probably it is the pivoting time. So I hope it replies to your question.
And yeah, it is. And it used the minister's word of the year, pivot. So it's, I will now pivot back to Paul Scully for his thoughts on consolidating that progress.
Yeah, thanks, James. Yeah, look, in terms, first of all, the figures were, so this was the startup loans that are offered via the British Business Bank. 40% of those have gone over we launched them back in 2012, and over that period, 40% of them have gone to women, female-led businesses, should I say. And 25% of those have gone to businesses led by a BME entrepreneur. And you know, these are good figures. There's always more we can do. We're always looking through things like the Alison Rose review, through how to encourage more female entrepreneurs, for example. Because sometimes it's just interesting when you look at about women, you know, have less access to finance. And sometimes it's because they're not asking in the same way, or approaching it in the same way as male entrepreneurs for some reason. And in other ways, from the BME perspective, sometimes they don't build up sometimes the networks are more informal. And so sometimes miss out on that mainstream system that is around, whether it's through growth hubs, whether it's around FSB, Chamber of Commerce, and those kind of things. So it's how do we make that available to absolutely everybody? But so how do we consolidate the digital take-up? Well, you know, when I first got this job almost a year ago now, and COVID was I think I just got back from Burma actually, so I wasn't quite patient zero, but obviously COVID was something that was happening over there, not here at the time. And we had the employment bill as the cornerstone of our business policy manifesto, which is making flexible working the default option. And I thought that was going to be a real challenge working through with employers. That, well, boy, how wrong could you be given the situation of the pandemic? And that has actually caused a lot of the digital uptake. And I think it's really important to say on flexible working that flexible working is good, permanent working from home is not. Permanent working from home is basically living at work. So you've got to balance that out with, you know, I run my parliamentary office on WhatsApp. So I'm used to, as I say, cloud-based. I'm used to having partners around the country. And so actually running offices around London is relatively easy for me. Not everyone's on that same situation, because my home I was able to design, you know, have a spare room like you do to do that. Not everybody has that ability, working from a laptop on their lap in their bed, or in their parents' house, or around a kitchen table with 6 other housemates is not always easy. So how do we make digital work with that? I don't want government to be driving the choice of you know, backing winners and losers. But what we do want to do is foster the atmosphere for take up, and that's really around skills in many ways. It's making sure people have the confidence to know what they're after, to work with it. And you know, we can talk about the fact that younger people, someone my age, I'm 52, you know, you might sit there and say that someone in their 20s grew up with computers and phones as a natural extension to their hand. Whereas that may be true, that doesn't always translate into digital take-up when you're getting into a workplace. So we still need to work through that that progression into the kind of areas that Anastasia was talking about, through a bit of education and structured support, really. But I don't want to be, as I say, doing it from a top-down approach, very much supporting and giving them the atmosphere to do so.
Thank you very much, both. Now, in terms of questions in the panel, I was going to go to we have Carl, Stephen, Patrick, Hunter, who would like to come in first. So, Carl, if you can bear with us while my colleague spotlights you and makes you visible and audible and all the other things.
There's really no need to do that.
Oh, well, if you'd like to speak from the ether, then will you please do so. And then after that, we're going to go to actually an old friend and colleague of mine, Jenny Booth, who has a question. But we'll so be ready for that, Jenny. But Carl, please speak to us from whichever electronic dimension you find yourself in.
You're more than welcome to share my things, but I'm just saying it's not a requirement. Firstly, Happy New Year to everybody. I was very interested in the Minister's comments, and I'll come back to those in a moment, but I'd firstly like to thank Simon for his opening comments, if you're there, Simon. Hello. So Simon, you've done a cracking job during COVID-19, and one of the things that the country don't seem to realise is just how much work Hayes did with Innovate UK on COVID technology funding. And I just give a case study, but you know, we won a part of that, and we've just gone into manufacture this week on an instrument to monitor the negative pressurization of ICU wards, which is a derivative of work we do with the Royal Navy and have done for 20 years. So firstly, thank you. Secondly, onto you, Paul. Many congratulations for your extraordinary efforts to reach out to the 5.9 million SMEs in this country. It's a really tough act, actually, and you've kept yourself upbeat throughout. But I just want to give you a few highlights from our experience as a high exporting advanced manufacturer. You know, we resisted. We never went into. So in March we lost half of our business when the oil price went down to nothing. So that meant we lost our entire offshore global markets. And then within a couple of weeks of that, we'd lost half of our shipping market, which we're on board about 20,000 ships, of nearly half the world's fleet of ships anyway, because the only ships that were moving were those that were transporting cheap oil. And at the time, we didn't know whether that was going to last a long or a short period of time. But what we did know is that this was going to be a huge economic hit that would probably exceed the length of the health one. And therefore, we went on a 90-day journey to reconfigure everything we did, from production to R&D to distribution, globally, the lot. Anyway, the great news is we didn't go into furlough once. We've taken on another 3 people since September. So we've now got about 35, 38 people in the UK and another sort of equivalent overseas. The key thing I'd like to stress, and probably go back to Simon, is that innovation is alive and well in this country. And the overall global environment that we operate in, where we're exporting 90% of what we make to 120 countries, is crafted by government. Therefore, the work that DIT and BEIS are doing to open up those trade agreements and continuity, economic continuity agreements, they are pretty vital. But some good news for you. 4th of January came and we started to export again to Europe. And we read all these reports in the new year about this burden on business. Well, Europe's about 15% of my global trade. And 2 bits of good news. One is that HMRC gave us something called an EORI number in 5 minutes last year, not 5 weeks, not 5 days, not 5 months like the press is telling you, 5 minutes, because it's simply based around your VAT number. And the second thing is that our first shipments that went out to Europe on the 4th of January, the sole additional burden to us was to book the shipment with our pre-programmed EORI number, accompanied with a shipping invoice, which of course we have to do anyway. So that took us 9 seconds per shipment. The goods arrived at those customers in the EU the very next day. One of the things that your previous Secretary of State did so well, Minister, Alex Sharma, was convene something called the Government's Economic Recovery Task Force. And I was very privileged to be a part of that for several months. All I would encourage the new Secretary of State and those 4 core objectives of the department, and I warmly congratulate him in post, is that Government Economic Recovery Task Force gave a slight insight as to how much better the department could do at putting business representative organizations alongside people like myself. In my case, I would say high exporting advanced manufacturers that are actually doing science, R&D, lab work through to production. In other words, I think we're a bit of an icon for what the Prime Minister wants. If you want to create jobs, then you have to create value. And if you want to create value, then you have to apply your design, your vision, your development, your research skills, all in a heady combination of the shortest time span that you possibly can within the resource constraints that you have. But you have to have the ability to meet domestic demand in parallel to export hope. And all I would say is that Government Economic Recovery Task Force that Alex Sharma did, I don't think really got the press it deserved, because its fundamental basis was that economic recovery won't happen in all probability until December 2022.
Carl, can I, thank you very much for the thought. And sorry to interrupt you. I'm very conscious of time and that we have more people who'd like to come in.
Yes.
Can I just extract a point you've just made there and put it to the panel, which is about, I think it's a really important point, about essentially the value chain and about what we can learn from the pandemic experience, the research we've heard today, and what policy can do to lift SMEs up that value chain. If there is, have we seen the sort of technological advances we've seen? Have we seen progress towards the creation of more high value, more complex, presumably highly profitable businesses, or has that process been set back by the experience of the last year? And from a government perspective, what more can and will you do to push the journey up the value chain for SMEs?
Yeah, shall I take that, James? Yeah, look, I mean, First of all, can I just say thanks to everything Carl's doing, because you're right when I talk about the fact that government doesn't do anything. Yes, DIT opens up the doors for exporting, but it's people like Carl that's been an export champion as well that really just sells the benefits of exporting to prospective exporters as well. So thanks for that, and thanks for your feedback about Brexit. Clearly there are issues for other companies, but I'm glad your experience was good. The round, I mean, I'm now taken on Nadeem Zahawi's, one of his responsibilities about aerospace as he's going on vaccinating the country. And clearly there, you've got that high value supply chain with some really key SMEs in there. And there's some really mature supply chains that are valued by the big companies at the top. And again, that's why government has specific areas within BEIS that actually that look and help that sector protect and develop those supply chains. And the economic roundtable that Carl described is exactly the sort of thing it's a shame we weren't able to, because of the variants and the changes with COVID, we weren't able to get to that recovery piece as quickly as possible. But the Prime Minister has announced the British Business Council, which has got some quite big businesses on it, but that does not preclude us from continuing to work with companies, smaller companies, SMEs, companies like Carl's, to make sure that we've got that voice in there. And developing those supply chains.
Thank you very much, Risen. I don't know if Effie or Anastasia, if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, James, that if we would like these added value technological products to be combined with a transition to net zero, then small and medium enterprises, they cannot do this by themselves. They need government support. So our results show that government policy with respect to grants and subsidies is a key driver to investing in environmental practices. So it's important that government provides grants and subsidies, that they have an explicit focus on green innovation, on green technologies. So generating these green innovations, investing on environmental research and development, but also supporting the diffusion of green technologies. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now, the next.
I just wanted to say thanks as well to Carl. We're very aware of the project down there in Somerset, and we know what you're doing, and I think it's really important. Innovation, we agree, is completely important. You know, innovative firms, people that engage in research and development, all firms, you know, typically grow faster, scale faster, export more. It is the sort of thing that innovation brings. And you know, Paul in his talk said it's one of the department's priorities, unleashing innovation. So it sounds we're in the right direction.
Lovely. The next question, I don't know if she wants to go on camera or at least be unmuted. It comes from Jenny Booth, and then after that I'm going to go to William Claxton Smith. If William is still around, I'm looking at my various names of list of names. I think he's still there. Anyway, Jenny, can you? I feel like a provincial radio DJ. So yeah. Jenny, tell us about your experience with the dog. Jenny.
Right, yes. Just a tiny bit of context. I work with the Association for Professional Sales and am currently writing a report on behalf of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Professional Sales on how COVID has impacted the sales profession in general. My question, which arose out of a chat with Professor Mark Hart last month, is how long does the government intend to maintain its COVID-related financial support to SMEs? Professor Hart pointed out that Germany and France have both committed to continue their equivalent of the job retention scheme until at least June 2022, and that this was to provide stability and continuity. We've heard nothing from the UK government, and I believe the job retention scheme is due to end at the end of March. Will the UK government be doing the same? Now, clearly that's a question for Paul Scully, but I'd also be be grateful if Dr. Ree or Dr. Kezidou could reflect on how important stability and continuity are for SMEs at the moment.
Thank you, Jane, for the question and for doing my job and broadening it out to all the panelists as well. So thank you. But I don't know which Paul, would you like to go first, or would you like Anastasia and Effie to talk while you?
No, I'm happy to take that. Look, I think because you talked about equivalent, Jenny, and oh, by the way, can you send my best to my erstwhile colleague Stephen Kerr, who's helping you, I think, at the APPG for professional sales. It's a very worthwhile organisation and cause. But look, I think you talked about equivalent, and it is the equivalent is not exactly the same. So our schemes were amongst the most comprehensive and generous in the world in terms of the furlough scheme and self-employment scheme. They're not based on a social insurance scheme, so you didn't have to pay in as you do on some of the international comparisons as well. So I talked about the fact we put 280 billion quid out already over the year, where the National Health Service's budget is 130-ish. And so we've gone quite a way, but we will continue to flex. I know from places like hospitality and retail, I'm the minister responsible for them. They actually come to me and talk about certainty with things like the cliff edges that are coming up, business rates, the VAT extension, and those kind of issues. And so we need to look at it in the round and our business support in the round. So clearly we've got the budget coming up on the 3rd of March. I know people want certainty before that, because you're right, certainty is absolutely key to businesses. I talked about managing risk and understanding externalities, and that's what I'm pushing the Chancellor for, to give as much certainty, but I'm hoping a bit more clarity will come, at least, if not before, on the 3rd of March.
Thank you very much. Anastasia or Effie, I don't know if which of you or both of you want to come in on the importance of certainty.
Effie, I will probably start. Just to tell that for sure uncertainty was one of the main issues picked up by our survey. Actually, the hugest barrier to business activities, to business growth, as perceived by SMEs, was uncertainty due to COVID and due to Brexit. And for sure, uncertainty is really not helpful for any kind of investment and for any kind of research and development activity and innovation activity. I know that there was a study about the UK innovation grantees and done by Stephen Roper of the Enterprise Research Center with his colleagues, and they actually found that there was a decrease in the research and development spending due to COVID-19 uncertainty. So uncertainty is very harmful for any type of research and development and innovation activity. So if we would like to kind of to help businesses to overcome these challenges and to help them to innovate and to research further, it's hugely important to give them a clear perspective on what will be the support in the future, in this year and the year to come. Probably, if you would like to add something.
Yeah, thanks, Anastasia. Just very quick with with respect to green innovation. So yes, economic stability, it is crucial, because investments on green innovation are over the long run. So the government needs to employ a consistent and systemic framework so as to transition to net zero. That's just that.
James, can I just quickly add on that support now? Because actually, I think it's dependent on what support you're after there. Because Germany and France have extended the furlough scheme. Now, the furlough scheme is a job retention scheme. It's not a business protection scheme. And so actually, it helped a number of sectors, but the hospitality sector was really great from the furlough scheme at the beginning. Now, what they're telling me is it is great for their employees. It's really bad for them, because they've just still got some massive fixed costs that they're burning cash, that they can park their employees that they're not using on a day-to-day basis, and they're okay. But the businesses themselves, when those employees want a job, want a healthy company to come back to, are struggling because of other pressures and other costs that we need to look at. So that's why it's important as well. Yes, give the certainty that you've been talking about, but also have the ability to flex given the particular economic circumstance that we're facing at any particular phase of the pandemic.
Thank you very much. Now, what might be the last full question, I think, will come from William Claxton Smith. There are several Williams in the chat box. I assume my colleagues are trying to find the correct William. If we have do we have success in William identification?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, William.
Claxton Smith, a retired asset manager. But as well as investing in large companies, I've been a director and investor in a fair number of small companies.
What's your question, William?
I have a question principally for the Minister about the deregulatory environment which we all hope is about to take place, and how the interests of small companies will be fully taken account of, given the superior lobbying power of large companies.
Yes. That's the question. How will the deregulatory agenda take appropriate cognizance of the interests of small businesses relative to the lobbying might of big?
Yeah, it's really good point and really interesting work. It's through the voices of roundtables like this. We need specific examples. Give me a specific example of regulations you want to get rid of that's not weakening employee protections. Then, but if we can get rid of bureaucracy, get rid of red tape, then absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I introduced in terms of workers' rights just last week was greater support in the workplace for those facing domestic abuse. But only in doing that, that was about awareness. It was not adding bureaucracy. It was just adding awareness to employers to actually tackle, from a business point of view, a £1.9 billion estimated productivity issue. But clearly, from a good employer, it's the right thing to do. So can we come up with those sort of things that don't make it onerous for business, but make it easy for the right thing to do? I'm really interested to hear the small business view rather than necessarily those big lobbyists that you're talking about, William.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if any of the other panelists have any thoughts on the role that regulation does or does not play in the prospects of SMEs they want to contribute in our remaining. We've got about 4 minutes left, I think. So just a small subject to capture there.
Yeah, of course, bureaucracy. Nobody wants bureaucracy, but if we want to safeguard the environment for the future generation, because I think this is what we all want, right? It's not, we have this responsibility. Then without regulation, we cannot do it. So government regulation, not just punishing and putting penalties, but working with small and medium enterprises, supporting small and medium enterprises, then that's the way to do it. Not with, of course, extreme penalties, but empowering and increasing their capabilities in green technologies and in green organizational and environmental practices.
Great. Thank you very much. Now, there's one question from earlier on from Gail. I'll just read that because it was a relatively technical question to our presenters. Will we be sharing the slides? Yes, I'm sure, Gail. I'm sure we can share the slides if you get in touch via the address that you use to register for this event. And also, Anastasia, Effie, do you have details of data by industry in the survey yet, either now or forthcoming? Yes.
We do have data by industry, not by one digit SIG codes. We do have this information. So there are, for sure, quite an important differences dependent on industry, especially for the digital uptake. It's quite obvious. So we are happy to share this data, which but probably a little bit later, because we are working on the data now, and in the coming months we at the RC will be publishing research papers using this data, and you will have for sure some insights in terms of industry split from this data.
Thank you, because yeah, I think that, well, we'll certainly keep an eye out for that paper, because the intersectoral differences seem to be terribly important. As you know, as the minister you said earlier on, the different sectors' attitudes towards forms of business support and different experiences of the crisis have been very significant to this. I think we'll so the more evidence we can add to that collectively, the better, I think. Now at that point, the clock's telling me that we are at 13 minutes past the hour. We'd asked everyone to be here until 15 minutes past, which gives us slightly less than 120 seconds to wrap up. So I will call things to an end there by thanking everybody very much for coming to the event. Before you all go, can I point out that we, as a small non-profit charitable business, will be innovating over the online event experience, and you'll be getting when you log off Zoom, you'll get the option of filling out a questionnaire to tell us about your Zoom experience today, so we can try and improve it for future Ask the Expert events. So please do hang around and click that. It is quite quick, I promise. But with that, I will say thank you very much to all of our panelists, to Paul Scully, Mr. for Small Business, to Simon Edmonds from Innovate UK, part of UKRI, who make the Ask the Expert series possible at the SMF, and most of all to our experts, to Anastasia Ree and Effie Kesedou. So thank you all very much, and I do hope to see you, well, any and all of you, for future SMF events. We do these about once a month. Keep an eye on the mailing list that you use to sign up. But for now, I'll say thank you very much. Have a very nice rest of the afternoon. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.